If you're looking for homeschool sanity, welcome. I'm Dr. Melanie Wilson, Christian psychologist turned homeschool mom and curriculum author. But I was once so disorganized, I thought I had to quit homeschooling and stop having kids. Now, by the grace of God, I have 6 homeschool graduates. Whether we're discussing parenting, productivity, or practical tips, I pray that this episode is just what you need for happy, healthy homeschooling.
Hey homeschoolers, last week my guest and I talked about finding a homeschool community. Often our biggest concern is helping our kids make friends. But what about us? We need friends too. I might not have made it without the homeschool mom friendships I had. If you're interested in developing new friendships, you'll love my chat with Kristen Strong. Kristen, whose authored books include Girl Meets Change and When Change Finds You, also compiled the 90-day devotional Praying Through Loneliness. Her new book is titled Desperate Woman Seeks Friends. Kristen writes as a friend, walking alongside you in your lonely season to a more helpful, hopeful destination. She loves sharing laughs, long talks, and meaningful stories with family and friends while holding a cup of strong black tea. She and her U.S. Air Force veteran husband David have 3 beloved adult children. I found her delightful. Here's our conversation. Kristen, I'm so excited to talk with you about friendships with women. Specifically, we're talking to homeschooling moms. But before we dive into that topic, I would love to have you tell us more about you and your family.
Oh, well, thank you, first of all, Melanie. Thank you so much for having me. So I am an author and a wife of a military vet. We live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. That military brought us here, and then my husband retired like 11 years ago. But he still works, he works at the Air Force Academy, just on the civilian side of the fence there now. But that's what brought us here. I'm a born and raised Oklahoma girl. So if you hear a little accent, that's why. So I, grew up kind of a complete opposite of my adult life. I grew up on O'Neill Lane in Osage County, Oklahoma. And my last name and the name of everybody who lived on O'Neill Lane, by and large, was O'Neill. So I had, it was family since, before the area was even a state necessarily. So lots of family. Went to college about 50 miles away with a lot of friends and family to Oklahoma State. And there I met my husband. Well, a boyfriend at the time. We met, started dating, fell in love, decided to get married. And so then I transferred colleges as a senior, the things we do for love. I mean, not necessarily advisable for everyone, but it was the right move for me. But I transferred to a college in Ohio, and we get there, and my husband leaves for training right away. And I realized, wow, I went from knowing what felt like everyone to knowing nobody, And so that was a hard thing to reconcile with. And I was only 21, I was a baby essentially. And I mean, of course, I didn't feel that at the time. I felt very mature and grown up. But looking back, I'm like, well, I was a child, but or very young anyway. Not a child, but very young. And so, yeah, that kind of, so learning to make friends was a little bit of a baptism by fire thing for me to learn, because I had always, friends just kind of organically were always there. And then to go from that to having to start, make friends, period. I didn't know anybody, that was a hard thing. So.
Well, then, because you have shared some of your own story about having a struggle making some friends. Maybe you could tell us more of your story and then how you think it reflects the struggles that many homeschool moms face with
Sure.
friendships.
Sure. Well, I would say anytime you are in your life circumstances, either by choice or not by choice, this was by choice on my end. Ideally, I would assume if you're homeschooling as well, that's by choice as well. I homeschooled for 1 year, and it was definitely our choice. There, you run the risk of just having some isolation there with that comes with that. And I think that the hard thing about making friends is when you are more isolated, just by those circumstances, you have to work that much harder to get out and about, to
Mm.
find people because you're at home a lot. You're homeschooling. And so that's kind of what I discovered. Now I was going to school, and I kind of assumed, well, the school I transferred to was a small liberal arts college. I was a music major, which was a very small college within that college. And I kind of thought, well, it'll be obvious that I'm new and people will know and they'll just welcome me in, and that's not necessarily how it worked. I mean, people often already kind of had their people, by the time they were seniors. I also was
Mm.
married. I commuted. I lived on the fringes, of campus life. And so I was kind of an outsider in many ways. So for me, I really had to put myself out there. That was kind of the key originally was not expecting everybody else to do it and not me. And I would say the same could be said for, homeschoolers, homeschooling moms who are, kind of just, they're tapped out. They're schooling their kids, which is a full-time job. And then they're like, I'm out of social resources. I've given it all to these people, little people that I'm in
Mm.
charge of, or these young people I'm in charge
Mhm.
of. And that would be my encouragement is to, once, that is true 100%, but it is also true that we have to have some agency in that activity of finding friends. And so we still have to, by God's grace, reach down deep and put in a little bit more effort as we're able to make those connections because it is for our benefit. And then we bring a better mom to our kids, a better wife to our husbands, a better spouse, when we do that.
Mhm. I appreciated what you were saying there about feeling like you were on the fringes. Um,
Yes.
I have definitely felt that way as a homeschool mom, especially when my kids
Mm.
were playing sports with a local Christian school. The
Oh,
other moms, and I did know these women from church, but they had a connection through school activities and, um, just being in the know about what's happening at school that I was separate from. And so it made me feel like, again, like I was on the fringes. So I appreciated you just sharing that distinction, I think. And
hmm.
and I am excited to ask you more about a difference that you um, describe between soul deep friendships and
Mm.
casual connections. I think that is such an important distinction for homeschooling moms. And I would love to have you talk about the difference between those and then how we can pursue both types of friendships.
Yes. Yes. Well, in my research for my book, Desperate Woman Seeks Friends, I learned it takes about 50 hours of time together to make a casual friend, and then 2 to 300 hours to form a deep friendship. And I would say too, though, you could spend the key to a deeper friendship is just sharing vulnerably, like being willing to go deep yourself and not just skim the surface of conversation, the shallow waters of, that kind of can look like a list of what you did that day, your schedule and all of that,
Mhm.
but kind of how you're feeling about what's going on. That's sort of the key to getting down deeper. And In my research for this book too, I came across a wonderful book by Drew Hunter called Made for Friendship. And he talks about how it's the casual friendships we are real good at. And social media helps with that though, right? Because, I think on my Facebook, my personal Facebook, which is mostly friends and stuff, I still have like 1,000, like friends and family. I still have like 1,000 people on there. Well, I'm not friends with 1,000 people. Like I'm acquaintances, or,
Mhm.
we had a class together in ninth grade English or whatever. And
Mhm.
so I
Mhm.
haven't talked to them since ninth grade, other than, at least not in person. And so those casual friendships, what Drew Hunter talks about, those we've made friendship like a cruise ship where we know a little bit about a lot of people and what we really need in life, like what really feeds us and what we get the most benefit out of friendship wise is when we treat it like a submarine. So just a few good
Mm.
friends, like you don't need 100, of course, you don't even need 10, you just need a few. I would say more than one, because
Mhm.
sometimes we can
Mhm.
overwhelm just one. But you just need a handful of friends you can go deep with. And that is you're sharing the good, the bad, and ugly. And the older I get, the more I see how when I do that, it is like 99.9% of the time received as I hoped it would.
Mhm. Mm.
People are not, when I share like a really difficult thing that I would, not be as inclined to put on my social media highlight reel, they respond often like they may not understand or be able to identify with my exact problem, but they got a problem that is equally, not
Mhm.
pretty and real messy. And so they're not feeling prideful against mine because they got their own mess, and
Mhm.
so when you're able to share that with other folks, then that is what creates that deep friendship. And that's what we need. Yeah, a handful of deep friendships. Casual friendships, they're often the stepping stone to the deep ones. So I'm not saying they're bad in and of themselves. And certainly, along the way where we were, in the stands during sporting events or in music concerts in the concert hall, bumping elbows with parents and just enjoying talking, that
Mhm.
that's not a bad thing, but certainly I would argue even a necessary, a good thing, but not the kind of friendship that is going to give you the best benefits.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, that makes sense. I love that analogy, cruise ship and submarine.
I know, I love it too. It's so
Yeah,
good and it's so appropriate. Yeah.
definitely. Okay, so I think many moms who are listening to us right now are feeling like they are too busy
Ugh.
or they're just too tired to invest in friendships. So, what would you say to that mom who feels like friendship and looking for more friends is just one more thing on her plate?
Yeah, and I understand that. I have been there. There's those seasons where your home address might as well be the minivan, and you're teaching all day. You got the kids in the and activities in the afternoon, and you're like, well, this all sounds great, but my schedule is at capacity, and so I'm just socializing with my family or my mom and my sister or whoever you come across organically. And, again, there are seasons where that is true. It was seasons in my life too, where I was not, if my friends and I got together, it was because the friend handled all the scheduling and just basically told me what time I could show up with enough advance notice that I could pencil it in and, make it there. So all the grace in the world, and there's seasons where you're not just able to invest in friendships as much as you want.
Mm.
However, I would say that um, it can still be done, and I think the key to it, and I mean, first of all, it's great when you have those friends like I did during that time, a couple of friends who understood. I mean, Kristen's in a busy season. She is going to come back to life to us when this season ends, and sure enough, I did. But also, what I think helped was with one of those friends, especially, we had a ritual time of getting together. Like, the third Friday of the month, our families would get together. And so I knew that was just a thing and would put it on the calendar. Now, of course, life got in the way, and sometimes we couldn't make that time. But there are ways to, I think, use rituals in our friendship building experiences to get that connection. So, if you're a homeschooling mom, I mean, I would assume that you still have pockets of time where you can, maybe it's on Friday, or at least on maybe a holiday, like a Memorial Day or something, where you can have your friends come over then, and the kids are entertaining each other while you're just talking with adults. And you can do it at a time where you don't have to worry about serving a meal. You just maybe have a cup of coffee or just cold water. But also, like, I have had some things I've done are, a good friend of mine enjoy exercising together. So we do exercise, like take a couple of classes together a week, and we talk before and after that class. So if there's a way to do that, even, maybe after your spouse gets home and then you're gone. Also, yeah, when my kids were really young, we would put them to bed, a friend and I, and then we would walk the Target aisles together after bedtime. So, and then also, even like a story time. Do you do a library story time? I mean, that's the benefit of kids, is their parents come with them. And so, is that a way? But it's really kind of finding something you like and doing it on repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, that's just once, and then once you start getting the benefits from that, you start wanting to schedule it in because it's feeding you, it's not draining you.
Mm-hmm.
But I get it. Like, studies are, and I would say it's not just that mama listening who's like, oh, I don't have time. That is the general feeling these days. Parents today, in general, whether you homeschool or not, spend twice as much time with their kids as parents generations ago. I mean, that's a lot of, that's a significant increase. So if you think of your time as a pie, there's a
Mm-hmm.
much smaller slice given towards friendship. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, C.S. Lewis wrote in the 1960s about how we don't give friendship enough time. And we have only gotten worse about that, here, these many years later. So, it is easy to back burner the friendship, but if there's a way you can do it where you are kind of, as the expression goes, killing two birds with one stone, you're getting something done that you need to get done or that you want to get done, that you prioritize. And doing it with somebody else, that's something that's scheduled, and then it's just the work is kind of done for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that tip about making it regular, making it scheduled.
Yeah.
And I would just encourage moms who are listening that so often I have talked to very busy friends of mine who have something planned with friends, not with me. So it wasn't insulting to me, but
Right, right.
they had something planned with other friends, and they would just tell me, I'm just so tired. I wish I didn't have to go. And every single time they go, and they're so glad that they
Yes.
do. It's kind of like exercise. We just think, oh, I don't have the energy for this. But then after it's over, you are energized. So I really want to encourage you to get those dates on the calendar
Mhm.
and then follow through, because you will be so glad that you did.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is one of those things. Yeah. And I think that's the enemy's way, is to really
Mm.
fill you with like, oh, there's so many other things you could be doing with this time. And
Mm.
because he knows it will benefit you in the long run, and he doesn't want you to be fed and encouraged and energized. So he will convince you it is not worth the time. But boy, if you just are faithful to follow through with that, like I even my so when my kids have done all kinds of schooling things, but when they were in traditional school at this one school, I'm not a big meeting person like the PTA. I'm like, oh, these are draining. I
Mhm.
appreciate people who do them, but I wanted to volunteer in the classroom then and kind of just get to know the teachers that they had. And so I would do that. But now was I waking up super excited to go volunteer with a lot, a very loud environment and all of that? Not as much, but boy, I would go and I would have so much fun, and I met a couple of good friends there where we took that friendship from that classroom out, and we would get together outside of the classroom because, of course, we lived in the same neighborhood and everything, so it was real easy to do that. So, yeah, boy, there is benefit. Sometimes I just think about, the harder I'm feeling pulled not to do this, it's almost like I think it at 50 years old, 51 next week, the more I can know that I bet I'm getting good benefit from it, or I wouldn't be
Mm,
feeling this way. And of
mhm,
course, there not that there's not times where you have just had a long day and you are that you are going to be dragging this, dragging be a and I even say that, well, you could still go and they may help lift your mood. But there are times, I mean, legitimately, like maybe you just got in a fight with your husband and you feel like you are just not in a place to,
mhm,
chat, or just something is going really hard. Your kid is just all over the place, and you feel like if I go, I'm just going to be managing him the whole time. No, thank you. There's certainly grace for that, and understandable that you would then be like, I'm going to bow out for the sake of everyone. But that hopefully, ideally, is the exception and not the rule.
mhm. Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about busyness as being an obstacle
Yeah.
to making friends. In your book, you talk about the fear of rejection
Yes.
being another obstacle. And I have definitely experienced that. So, how can homeschool moms overcome the insecurity or that awkward feeling that often comes with trying to make new friends?
Yes. Oh, my word, if that's not true. Well, I would say, first of all, I think just coming to a place where I accept that awkward is just part of it. It is, like my friend Holly Girth says, awkward is the price of admission for connection. So, like, I
I
wish
love
there was
that.
a way I mean, honestly, I think that's why we like our phones and social media so much,
Mhm.
because I think it helps us circumvent the awkward a little bit. You don't have to bring up people don't see the totality of who you are as they would more so if you sat down to a meal for a couple hours. But I would say just accepting that awkward is a part of it, and the good news is that it can also be. I tell a story in the book about a really awkward encounter I had with my very good friend May Powell. I mean, I really embarrassed myself, but like we are tight buddies now. So I almost think that the more awkward it is, the higher the chance of connection. That's what I've come to experience. But the more you are sort of just, I guess, accepting that, the easier it just becomes. Like, it's still awkward, but, it's like, when you hear somebody else's kid crying at church, like, you're aware of it, but it's not your kid, so you're like, it's fine. So, it's fine, I don't care. It's like, they're doing the best they can over there, so, but you notice it, but it's not like bothering you. And that's how I
Mhm,
feel about the awkward factor now. But yeah, the more kind of heart stinging thing is the risk for rejection.
mhm.
And yeah, I have had some rejections. Like, I have swung the bat in friendship and missed a lot because, it takes two yeses for a friendship. And if the other person isn't interested in a connection, then, you cannot force them,
Mhm,
into it. You cannot, uh, you cannot do the work of both people. So I guess where I've landed with rejection is, it's terribly painful, and it is okay to be sad about it, to lament the loss of kind of what you wanted, whether it's a long established friendship that just turned, or it's a newer one that you hoped would become something that didn't. It is okay to be sad about that. It's okay and good to process that with, a counselor, your mama, your husband, whomever, you want to talk with, your spouse. But at the end of the day, know that, as my friend Selena says, rejection is God's protection against what is not in your best interest,
Mhm.
and I find that very helpful to remember that often rejection, we can internalize it as being about us. It is often not the case. It is about the other person.
Mhm.
I talk about this story in the book where I did have a friend change her mind on me on a dime, and
Mhm.
we were great friends to almost seemingly overnight, not even
Mm.
speaking. And it turns out the issue that she'd had with me was 100% about her and her own insecurities. It wasn't about me at
Mhm.
all. So all
Mhm.
those nights I spent like, what did I do that I shouldn't have done, or what did I not do that I was supposed to do? All those questions I ran myself ragged with were just not even a part of the equation.
Mhm.
And that's the thing is 99% of the time rejection is or real or perceived. And
Mhm.
sometimes I think we can perceive rejection where it's not there. It's just
Mhm.
that person's busy. That person's in a season where they're running their kids to and fro, and they just don't have time to give anything to anybody other than those people under their roof. That's often, I think, the case, and it's not about us. And also just to see the rejection as we are not unique in experiencing it. That doesn't mean it's hard. It doesn't mean we should gloss over it, but also make sure we're not slipping into kind of what, because this is what I used to do. I would slip into a little bit of a victim mentality, like, this only happens to me. Nobody else understands. Like, no, Kristen Strong, it does not just happen to you. It happens
Mhm.
to everybody. And
Mhm.
and there's varying levels. There's some rejection that hurts worse than others, absolutely.
Mhm.
All the more reason to process it with somebody, in your life, to journal about
Mhm.
it and what helps. But to realize this is a part of life. I don't like it, but it is a part of life and I have to accept it.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
again, it's likely not even about me in the first place.
Mhm. Yes, that is a very hard, um, fact of life
Hmm.
to just absorb and, live with,
Right.
but
Right.
it is true. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
not
w
fun. Not fun
no,
at
it is
all.
never fun, never
I
fun.
unsubscribe from the rejection. I would like to, but that's just
Mhm.
not how life works.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have talked about 2 obstacles to friendship so far. Let's talk about another very common one, which is being an introvert.
Oh,
So, I'm not an introvert, but I have been working over the years to have more understanding and compassion for people who are introverts. And I can absolutely identify, even though I am an extrovert, I don't love walking into a group of people that I don't know or don't know well and trying to build relationships. That's not that fun for me. um, but what advice do you have for some creative or unexpected places that an introverted homeschool mom could
mm.
find some meaningful friendships?
Well, it's funny. I mentioned my friend Holly Girth earlier, her quote about awkward being the price of connection,
Mhm.
or being the price of admission for connection, authentic connection. And she's really like, she does a lot of work with introverts and studying it. And it was interesting. I just had a conversation with her recently about this. So I'm an introvert as well. I can play like an extrovert. I feel like the Air
Mhm.
Force taught me how to extrovert when I gotta, but boy, I gotta have alone time or at least some sort of quiet time to recharge. I get
Mhm.
depleted pretty easily. And so I guess my thought would be, I used to kind of feel like, because I think as a kid, I was more extroverted. I've gotten more introverted in my older years. And I used to think, if somebody was really quiet, or kind of keeping to themselves as an introvert, they were not having a good time. Like they
Mm.
were
Hmm.
they were um overwhelmed or just not into what was happening. And Holly that was one thing we talked about, is when an introvert gets really quiet, they're actually just very content. And so, and I'm sure there's exceptions to the rules. There could, introverts that are listening, I don't pretend to be the expert here
Mm-hmm.
at all, but I thought that was really interesting. So, I would just say have grace when you have the introvert over and she's real quiet. If you feel like you kind of have to fill that space with something, just know that you don't have to. It's not, because it's not like they are looking at you to compensate for what they're not doing. They are just living out their created, they're the way they are to experience something. And
Mm-hmm.
so I found that helpful, though, because I've had some friends that were much more introverted than me. And honestly, my husband he's very introverted. And yeah, when he's quiet, it doesn't mean like he's upset at me or
Mm-hmm.
thinking that there's a problem. It's really just that he's just content and in his peaceful place. And so I find that helpful, though, to remember with friends too. But yeah, I don't know if that's a great answer to your question, but that is just one thing that has helped me along the way. And again, I'm introverted, but
Yes.
but it's there's varying degrees,
Right.
so
So that does help me to understand because I think I have interpreted maybe someone who's over who is sitting away and just being quiet as, oh, they're not having a good time, they're depressed.
yes,
um, but given that sometimes as an introvert, you're going to want to be away from the crowd and just having a
yeah.
quieter time. How can an individual who does have that personality style then begin to build a meaningful friendship?
Yes. Well, I think just persistence with with awareness, I guess, that if somebody says no to an invitation, you can give, that doesn't mean you hit them with three more right then and there, but you give it a little bit of time and then just check in with them again.
Mhm.
I think, like I said, as an introvert myself, I appreciate that. Now, it doesn't mean always, again, maybe there's just, the introvert is just not, feeling the connection with you. That's certainly happened with me too. And that's fine. It's
Mhm.
all, I don't feel a connection with every single person who's maybe extended a hand of friendship with me either. Like that's just kind of the way that goes.
Mhm.
Any kind of relationship, it takes, like I said, two yeses. But I guess don't be quick to think they're not interested in you just because they do say no, or just because they come and only stay an hour,
Mhm.
instead of 2 hours. It just may mean that's just what they got for that day.
Mhm. If
So,
you are an introvert, does it make sense to try to build friendships with other people who are quiet? Because it seems like they're drawn to other introverts a lot of times. Not
right.
all the time. A lot of times we like opposites. But so if you're an introvert, should you look around for other people who are maybe sitting off by themselves to try to build that connection with?
Well, I guess I don't think I put that. I would say yes. I would say yes, first of all, but I don't know that I think too much about it because I see like the extroverts in my life, I sure appreciate because boy, they're just off and running with the conversation and everything. They're planning the events and it's very easy to just roll right in with them. Now, again, I'm not going to, I still want to have the ability to share and talk and have my
Mhm.
say and whatnot. That's the blessing of extroverts. But introverts, I think, are great too because they're great listeners, and
Mhm.
and not
Mhm.
that extroverts aren't. These are not mutually exclusive
Yeah.
qualities, but uh, but I guess when I'm looking at a friendship, when I'm meet a gal that I would think, oh, I think she'd be a fun friend to hang out with. I don't. I guess I don't give too I guess the connection to me possibility is outside of whether they're extrovert or introvert. I don't put
Okay.
that much stock into it.
Okay.
Now
So, yeah.
yeah, I guess I just don't put that much stock into or, thinking in that way. I just think,
Mhm.
gosh, is this person do because there's a whole study about the friendship spark,
Mm,
some people say making friends as an adult is like dating, you're like, do you like me or not? Kind of
right.
thing. I mean, it's not exactly the same, of course, but
Mhm.
you're sort of trying people out a little bit. And so, yeah, I just kind of think that there's something there I like and that I feel like I connect with, So
Uh-huh. Okay.
I look at that beyond really what they are as an introvert versus an extrovert.
Right. So it sounds like you're saying if you're an introvert, the advice that you've been giving us throughout our conversation still applies to you. You know,
Yes, a
you're going to have to
hundred
be
percent.
awkward. You can. One thing I'm kind of getting from you is it might be a good idea for you to kind of sidle up to an extrovert because
Yes.
because she'll do a lot of the heavy lifting for you.
Have mine sure have in the past. Yeah, but I would definitely say if you're an introvert going, "Oh, making friends is just hard for me because I'm an introvert."
Mhm.
I would challenge that with, "Oh, making friends is hard for the extroverts too."
Mhm.
They worry, you worry that an introvert may worry like, "Oh, I need to, I need to be kind of doing more here." And the extrovert goes, "Oh, I need to make sure I'm pumping the brakes and not coming on too strong." That can happen as well. So it may be hard in different ways, but it is still
Mhm.
hard. It is still hard. So yeah, I would say, I mean, speaking, as some in what I've written about friendship here in Desperate Woman Seek Friends,
Mhm.
it applies to all, all personality types, I would say.
Yes. Well, I like that. Yes. As an extrovert, we're always saying to ourselves, stop talking, don't talk so much.
Right.
And it's just about impossible.
I
Uh,
know it. I know. And that's okay. And like I said, I can play an extrovert real well. And I've thought the same thing too. Especially I'm pretty good at I can go into host mode. If I sense they're quiet, I want to start compensating.
mm,
And I
mhm,
have to tell myself, Kristen, let that, that's not necessary, right? Every just
mhm.
because your knee-jerk reaction feels it is. So
Okay. All right. So you have um kind of hinted at this already in our discussion about just the issue of rejection. But
mm.
what encouragement would you offer to the mom who has been hurt by a past friendship or a past rejection and is hesitant to try again?
Yeah. Well, I would say, first of all, like I mentioned, likely that rejection wasn't about you
Mhm.
and it's about what's going on in her life and something that really went sideways. I would say you never know what, but by allowing this friendship to end, the Lord is sparing you from in the future.
Mm,
As painful it is now, would something more painful, even more painful, even if that's hard to fathom, happened in the future. And I would say when I am going through that myself, like what, because I alluded to, I can really drive myself nuts with questions, because often you don't have an answer to why this happened and you
mhm,
don't get the benefit of an apology. And you think, well, I'm not even like, it's like you don't even have any sort of social graces to know what my feelings would be here, because it can just happen so in such a cold and callous way. And
mm,
so what I like to do is pivot from those questions that don't have answers to those that do. So, if a friendship ends without your say so, as I like to say, what does God say about you? And he says, nothing in all creation can separate you from the love of God. That's from Romans 8. God loves you and will never leave you. When a friendship changes like that, what won't change? And Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That's from Hebrews 13. And so he is dependable 100% of the time. And there's something comforting, certainly. I think it's the ultimate comfort to be able to rest in knowing Jesus was rejected too. He had a friend in the well, in the, he had Judas in his circle of disciples who were friends to him, who betrayed him, in a way that went down in infamy. So
Hmm.
he knows what it is to experience profound friendship pain, but he was always on the outside looking in, or he wasn't looking in though. He was looking up at his
Hmm.
father's will and just keeping that at the forefront of his mind. So leaning heavily on your faith and remembering what is true about what God says about you, because ultimately, your reputation is safest in His hands. And just saying, I give it up to you, Lord. I don't know what happened here, but I thank you that you are dependable, you are trustworthy, you are for me. You are, as Jesus is the friend that will never ever fail me. People will fail me one way or another.
Hmm.
Jesus never will.
I love that.
Mm.
Wonderful. Okay, so Kristen, can you tell us what we will find in your book, Desperate
Yes.
Mom Seeks Friends?
Yes, yes. So you will find a kind of different sections. One is how to be a good friend to yourself by kind of making sure you are in a good spot, that you are not that you're aware of behaviors that could be sabotaging friendships.
Mm.
Just some like we have talked there about. We talked a little bit about kind of being aware of just different personal tendencies we may have. And then also being a good friend, how to be a good friend to others. So you bring your best self to others, in friendships, how to make sure you are not lobbing high expectations at somebody as well. I guess that really falls under more the first section, watching boundaries. And so in the second section, a lot of the more relational stuff outside of your control, like how do you handle those friendships that end, friendship breakups? How do you handle that? Mean girls. And then also things you do have agency over, like what are some habits you can do that really build up and solidify those friendships and make them where, folks, boy, they want to be around you, because you have like a relational superpower in doing these different things. But then also the last section is about how Jesus really is that friend who never fails us, and kind of what friendship with him and being, because one of the best things we can do for our friendships here on earth is to work on our friendship with Jesus. So when we do that, like, we are automatically setting ourselves up to bring our best self to others, to be a great friend to others. And talking about other things too. Friends make mistakes. I've made mistakes. Listen, I tell on myself more in this book than anybody else. And so it is like I had a vulnerability hangover after it, because I tell a lot of my I give a lot of my, less than fine friendship moments in it.
Mm, mm,
But there's also garden variety mistakes that we don't want to throw friendship away over, because somebody makes that. So there's, but then there's also more serious ones where you need to contemplate, is this person like genuinely toxic, and can I not even parent my kids as well, or be as good of a
mhm.
spouse, or as good of a daughter, a mother, whatever, because this relationship is so all consuming, and what to do, and some practical things to say. If you find yourself in that situation, here are the words you can use to get out of that situation. So yeah, that, and I would say more, is inside Desperate Woman Seeks Friends.
All right. So is it Desperate Woman?
Yes, yes.
Okay, whoops. Desperate Woman instead of Desperate Mom.
Oh, well, that works too.
Desperate Woman. I love
That
that.
works too. I mean, I'm a mom as well. So, and I give the story behind the title. Desperate Mom Seeks Friends could have worked as well. So,
Well, we want to get it right. So, where can our listeners find this book? I'm just so thrilled that you have created this resource for Christian women,
Christian moms too. So where is the best place to find it?
Oh, you bet. So you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Christian Bookshop. If you like to, independent bookstores, a lot of those have them. You can also find it at my website, KristenStrong.com, and my first name is Kristen, so KristenStrong.com, and all my books are there. But there's a book tab at the top of the website, and you can hit it and see Desperate Woman Seeks Friends and see all the information there as well.
Okay. And then are you on social media where people could connect with you there too?
Yes, where I show up most is Instagram, and
Okay.
that's my name, just at Kristen Strong.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to put those links in the show notes for this episode with the correct title so you can go directly to the book. Kristen, this was really a delight, and it honestly encouraged me a great deal. So thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me, Melanie. What a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you.
To grab a copy of Desperate Woman Seeks Friends or connect with Kristen online, visit the show notes page at homeschoolsanity.com/momfriendships. Have a happy homeschool week.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I hope something you heard was encouraging. If you have a personal question to follow up, don't hesitate to message me. I'm at Homeschool Sanity on social media. Be sure to check my free resource page at homeschoolsanity.com/resource and find Sanity Saving Curriculum at funtolearnbooks.com. This has been a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.